All right, here with Dricus Du Plessis, and of course, there's big news that's just come out. You'll be on a UFC fight card. Before I get to all the questions, I want to ask you, how important is this to you, and is this a dream come true?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is probably the most important part of my career to this point. Everything I've done up until this point, winning all the belts in 2 promotions, winning double division, it was all. The purpose of it all was to get a shot at UFC, and now I'm finally here making my debut on the main card. So it's definitely a dream come true, and I can't wait.
There was a bit of complications, obviously, leading up before this point, where with your previous promoter, you had to get out of a contract. We're assuming that all sorted with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was signed with KSW for 2 years, and my contract only would have ended in November. And obviously with the whole corona thing, there was a clause in there that they could keep me for a little bit longer, and we came to terms, monetary terms, to get me out of the contract sooner. And luckily it all worked out, and it went over smoothly. There was a bit of a rough patch, but I mean, we negotiated, my agents and KSW came to a good agreement, and it's all settled now.
I mean, although things obviously are settled and done, it was a good experience for you to go overseas and travel. You went to Poland, did really well that side. I think you had 4 fights there, if I'm not mistaken.
3 fights, yeah.
3 fights, you won 2 of them, and then you lost 1 to a guy that you had previously beaten.
Yeah.
That experience coming into this fight, how much does that mean to you?
I mean, absolutely, to travel and fight is a completely different experience than to just fighting at home. So to have that experience, that makes this whole thing with the UFC, traveling and fighting in another country, in a foreign country, cutting weight, making sure everything's perfect when traveling, it makes it so much easier, because that's a big hurdle in itself, is to get used to that, and everything has to go right when traveling, because you're not at home where you can get everything you don't know everything, you don't know where to get something when you need it. So I think that that's definitely playing in my advantage. Obviously, 2 of my fights over there were at welterweight. Now I'm fighting at middleweight. This is a much smaller weight cut. So since we made that change, I'm feeling great. I'm much better at middleweight. I'm feeling healthier. So I mean, that experience is definitely gonna help me. And so not a lot of things are gonna be new. The only thing that really is new is that I'm fighting for the UFC. Nothing else is gonna shock me. So that's most definitely gonna play in my favor.
When operating for a company like the UFC, obviously you are in the middleweight division now. You're going to have to establish yourself as a middleweight now. I don't think there's much chopping and changing when it comes to the big organization. Middleweight, is that going to be settled for you now?
Yeah, absolutely. If ever later in my career, light heavyweight will be an option, but welterweight, I'll never fight welterweight again. That weight cut was unhealthy, and in the beginning it was fine, but then I started getting bigger, and my walk around weight is just too high. So middleweight is definitely my home now. I'll never go lower than middleweight again. When
you look at the size of guys like Israel Adesanya, he's obviously very tall, maybe a lean guy, and you look at yourself, do you compare like that?
Yeah, I mean, I can compare myself with Israel. I've trained with him. He's quite a bit taller than me, but he's a whole lot skinnier than me. And the average height of the middleweights in the UFC is 182 in meters, so that's 6 foot. I'm 6'1", so as far as reach goes, I have one of the longest reach of people I'll ever face. So I'm really not giving up size in any way. My walk around weight's heavier than most of them. As far as size goes, I'm definitely able to compete with the middleweights, and strength-wise, definitely as well. I think it's one of my strengths is the fact that I'm strong and the conditioning that I have.
Mark Perez is the guy that you're going to be stepping in there with, a guy from Brazil, 2 wins, 2 losses in the UFC. Of course, he has a career outside of the UFC as well. It's the sort of guy that you should be beating if you really want to make your name in the UFC. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a ranked opponent. He's in the top 30, so it's a great opponent to step in and make my debut. I always said I want to make my debut against a top 20 guy. So I don't want to climb the ladder from the bottom. I've already faced world-class opponents. So for me to spend 4 years building up to a title shot and fighting no names, it's not going to benefit me that much. So getting a big fight like this, obviously a lot of pressure, and I like it that way. I've faced a whole lot of pressure in my career, and that's when I feel I shine the brightest, when the spotlight's on and I'm on the big stage. So right now I'm stepping in on short notice on the main card, and I truly believe that's going to bring out the best in me. And beating a guy like Marcus Perez very convincingly is going to shoot me right up into the ranks and show put the whole division on notice and put the whole organization on notice. And that's going to propel my career so much faster and put me 2 years ahead.
Well, I mean, he's a theatrical character. I mean, he comes sometimes with a clown face to the weigh-ins. He's done a little bit of Dragon Ball Z as well. How do you feel coming up against a character like, obviously you've come up against characters like Yannick Bahati locally, but I mean guys like him obviously on another level, with theatrics like that? Do you look forward to the entertainment aspect of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think every guy has his own way of getting ready for a fight mentally, and I guess that's the way he does it. I don't know if it's for his own personal mental strength, or is it to try and throw off his opponents. I don't think anything like that's going to ever throw me off. I mean, he should do what he wants to do, and when fight night comes, I'm going to do what I want to do. And I guess that's what it's all about. It's not to be bothered by any theatrics, and I just go there, be myself, and do what I always do, and finish the fight.
When you compare your level now to the UFC beginning guys, I'm not saying necessarily the champions, because you're still obviously going to have a journey and building up that way. How do you think you stack up compared to some of the guys that are at the bottom of the UFC middleweight division?
I definitely see myself as if you go about, let's say, the bottom feeders in my division, I don't belong there. I belong with the top guys right now. I've been a champion in KSW, which is the third biggest promotion in the world, the biggest in Europe right now, and I was a champion there. I honestly believe that just because they're in the UFC, he's a Brazilian guy training out of America, it makes it quite a bit easier for them to get a shot. I mean, if you look at my record and you look at some of the guys' records in the UFC, I definitely belong there, and I belong with the top guys. I have a top record in world-class promotions. I didn't fight bums. I fought some great fighters with great experience, and I do believe this is the best time for my career to be in the UFC to get signed. But I think the top 30, the bottom 30 of that division, I don't need to be hanging around there at all.
We saw Gareth McClellan obviously earlier on, obviously quite a bit back now, into the UFC. He won a fight, but it ultimately didn't work out. Is that a motivation for you to be like, okay, I'm a South African, I've got to prove a point now, because we need to, like Don Madger, for example, has gone on a 2-fight win streak. Is that same fire inside you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to have a whole country behind you, and to have a guy like Gareth, who's a pioneer in the sport, and getting the first victory for South Africa in the UFC, it means the world. And I think the one problem was Gareth was quite a bit older. He was ending his prime when he signed with the UFC, and I mean, that's bad luck. It was just because the sport was so young in South Africa, and we were overlooked as a country in MMA. So I think he definitely set a stage, and right now it's guys like myself, Don, Champion. It's guys like us that have to carry it further, to carry that name and show that the African continent has a lot of talent as far as MMA goes to offer the world. And I do believe there's quite a few guys that's going to come through the ranks as we start building it. And definitely the responsibility of carrying a whole country's, a whole continent's reputation is absolutely everything. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that. I mean, if you go compete in the Olympics, you're representing your country, and that's exactly what I'm doing. This is my Olympics, and this is me representing my country, and I'll do everything to make well on that.
Is it important for you to stay in South Africa and compete and go overseas? Because obviously we find, as you said, it's difficult. We are on the end of the earth here, we're always going to be traveling somewhere to be fighting. Is it important for you to stay here, train here, and build up your team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my team has made me the fighter I am today. I've never been with another team. I do travel and go train at other teams, but predominantly my team is here in South Africa. And if I ever decide to move, I will be taking my team with me.
Well, that's fantastic. And obviously, just a message to your trainer. I mean, he's obviously, as you said, you've only been with him. I mean, how important has he been in your career? I mean, obviously he's been important, but I mean, to what point?
I mean, I think every fighter needs to find himself a trainer, and even if you look at what's considered as the best coaches in the world, if you say Jackson's Wink, for example, not everybody's going to fit in there, and not all fighters are going to fit in there. They have a much more clinical approach, where we have a more of a tough style approach. So I think when you as a fighter, you have to click with your coach, and if you don't click with your coach, it's not going to work, no matter how good a coach he is or how good a fighter you are. I think a coach and a fighter has to resemble each other, and they have to have the same picture in mind and how they see the fight going, because every coach has his picture of what he thinks a good fighter should look like and what a guy should do to get ready for a fight. And my coach, Monet Visser, he knows me inside and out. He's been with me even before I was a pro. So there's nobody that knows me like he does, and there's nobody that can get me ready for a fight like he does. So I think it's very important that you know your coach, and your coach knows you inside and out, because he needs to know when you are pushed to your limits and how far he can push you. And ultimately, that's what's going to bring the best fight out of you, is if your coach pushes you exactly the right amount.
So back to the UFC fight again. You're going to be fighting on Yas Island, Abu Dhabi. Have you been there before? Do you know what the conditions are like? It's obviously going to be really hot there, and also no crowd. I mean, there's a whole lot of variables. It's not exactly the most ideal time, but of course, a fight's a fight. How do you feel about the whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, for getting a short notice call to the UFC is always how I imagine it playing out, to be honest. Especially being from South Africa, you're going to be on a short list for a short notice call. Fighting on Yas Island, Fight Island, that's absolutely awesome. I mean, that's a historic venue, it's a historic event. Nothing like that has ever been done before. So that's awesome for me to be fighting there. Obviously, I feed off the crowd quite a lot. The energy of the crowd, any fighter does. Some guys do get more nervous. Even me, I get nervous because of the crowd, but it brings the best out of me. So fighting with no crowd is going to be the first time in my career. So that's going to be a challenge, but nothing that I'm not willing to face. I faced challenge before. And once again, the bigger the challenge, the bigger I need to step up. And I really think that's going to be a big factor for me is I have that BMT, and when the camera's on and when the fight's on, I know I'm going to be the best version of myself in there. And it's going to be very hot. I've been there. I've been to Dubai, not for a very long time, mostly for layovers and flights. But as far as I heard, as far as UFC fighters go, they said the venue is cooled down, the hospitality is great. So I don't think that's anything that we're going to need to be worried about. If you're talking about the elements and all that, I think Fight Island is the second time there's events there. So the second series of events there. So I think all the crinkles, all the cracks that wasn't perfect the first time is definitely going to be perfect this time. I mean, it's a world-class promotion.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously UFC, I mean, it's the biggest promotion in the world. Them, Bellator, maybe ONE FC is also growing and is a number 3 at the moment. How long have they been after you? I mean, how long have they been wanting to get you on their bills?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been in talks with the UFC for quite a while since I signed with Ruby Agency, and we've always been on a short list. They've always been looking at me, and I have to say, probably about even I would say 10 months ago, beginning of this year when I was in the States, the first time they reached out and said, listen, when I got a few offers and I said I was considering that offers, fighting for PFL or fighting for bigger organizations. And the UFC said, listen, okay, if we get a release form, we can sign you. And it was all pretty sudden. And I mean, we've been in talks. Obviously, the contract negotiations with KSW didn't go too great in the beginning. And as soon as we got that release letter, the UFC reached out, and there we went.
I'll take you a little bit off track real quickly. Middleweights, the champion, Israel Adesanya. We spoke about him earlier in the piece. Him and John Jones have been having a bit of a go at each other on Twitter. He wants Israel Adesanya to step up to the light heavyweight division and fight him. Do you think that's a good fight for Israel?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I think John Jones is very big. I think John Jones is somebody that has this similar style to Israel. I think Adesanya has a great striking. He's world-class striking, whereas John Jones has a more all-around game. John Jones obviously world-class striker and world-class wrestler, which in my opinion, Israel is a very tall guy. His reach he makes it hard for people because he fights on the outside. But now he's facing a guy who's even taller than him and fights the same kind of style. He's just been doing it for so many more years. And I mean, John Jones is the best to ever do it at this stage. And I mean, that would be a great fight. I'm not saying anybody's going to walk over Izzy, but I do think John Jones will kind of manhandle him in that fight.
If we're looking at the UFC top 5 in the middleweight division right now, who do you think you stack up best against? I know obviously you're not going to get the fight right now, but maybe in the years to come.
Yeah, I mean, the top 5 is a scary place right now. It's
a hard division.
Easy. There's Robert Whittaker, that coroner, he's there. Paulo Costa, all big guys, all great fighters. And as far as the top 5 goes, I think Jack Hammerson, he's in top 5. He's ranked number 5 now, and a guy like that, I honestly see myself beating a guy like that, fighting Chris Weidman maybe. I mean, he's been on not a great streak, but he's still a top 10 guy. Somebody that in the near future will be a great fight for me, maybe in the next year or so. I would love to fight someone like that.
Also, a really big name is Chris Weidman. I mean, that puts you on the map straight away, as so does this fight. So what happens in this fight for you? I mean, obviously, it's a first fight. There'll be a lot of nerves, obviously competing, a lot of eyes on you, television. What are you expecting in this fight?
Yeah, I mean, the expectations are extremely high for this fight. A lot of eyes, the whole country behind me. And to be honest with you, I'm looking forward to that. I've been in that situation before, fighting overseas. And I can't wait to carry the nation's pride on my back when I step in there. And it's going to be added pressure, but it's only good pressure. And yeah, the expected from me from this fight is to go out there and not just win a fight. I don't want to win the fight. I've won fights. I'm in there to make a statement. So going out there and fighting for that performance bonus, fighting so people take note, not only getting the win, but getting the win in spectacular fashion. That's what it's all about for me.
What would your message be for your opponents before you guys step in that cage?
I mean, I guess I don't really know, but as far as the message goes, is like I always say this: you've never faced anybody until you faced me, and no, I know I'm nobody's walkover. I've never been an easy fight for anybody, and win or lose, if you fight me, you're gonna know you're in a fight. And I mean, I honestly hope he's prepared for that, and you need to be prepared to get tested at every aspect of MMA. When it comes to wrestling, grappling, and stand-up, I'm an all-around guy, and I finish fights everywhere. I mean, if you look at my record, 9 submissions, 5 TKOs, all finishes. I go out there to get the finish, and it's going to be a high pace, and you better be ready for that.
And then just lastly from you, Dricus, a message for maybe the people of South Africa and the channel and anyone you want to thank.
Yeah, I mean, thank you to every single person in South Africa and worldwide that's been keeping an eye. People, I've just been getting an overload of messages of people wishing me well in the UFC, and it means the world to me. I mean, to see how many people takes note of hard work and people just appreciating the fact that I've worked to come here, and people not just assuming that I've got given the opportunity, but people know that I worked for it. And I mean, all the years of support, building a fan base, and all the fans just following my career. And if it wasn't for them, and if it wasn't for them watching my fights and keep on motivating me to be the best that I can be, I wouldn't be in this position right now. So I'm honestly humbled by the opportunity and by all the support and messages I've been getting. And thank you, each and every one of you, and I won't let you down.